Commander Vexthor stood at the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars stretch past the viewing screen. His empire had conquered 40 star systems in the last decade alone. No species could stand against the Zalthari military might. Their weapons were the most advanced in known space. Their soldiers were trained from birth for war. Their fleet numbered in the thousands. Today, the Galactic Council had summoned him to their chamber. Vexthor found it amusing. The council was a gathering of weak species who talked about peace and cooperation. They had no real power. They made suggestions that stronger civilizations could ignore. The council chamber was a massive dome on the neutral station orbiting the dead world of Krathnor. Representatives from dozens of species filled the seats. They all turned to watch as Vexthor entered, his tall frame covered in the black armor of a Zalthari commander. The council leader, an elderly being from the Mothra species, raised one thin hand. His voice was soft but clear. "Commander Vexthor, we have called you here to discuss your fleet's planned route through Sector 749. Vexthor crossed his arms. "My fleet goes where the Empire demands. That sector contains valuable resources and strategic positions." "That sector," the council leader said slowly, "contains the restricted zone around the yellow star designated as Sol. The humans call it Earth." A ripple of nervous sounds passed through the chamber. Several representatives shifted in their seats. Vexthor noticed their discomfort and felt only contempt. "The humans," Vexthor said with a harsh laugh. "They are barely space-worthy. Our intelligence reports show they have only recently developed faster than light travel. They have no empire, no conquered worlds, no fleet that could threaten even a single Zalthari destroyer." The council leader's expression remained calm. "Commander, we ask you to review the historical records. 7 different civilizations have attempted to enter Earth's region in the past 5,000 years. None returned." "Lies meant to frighten children," Vexthor replied. He had reviewed the so-called records. They were vague, full of missing data and unexplained gaps. The most likely explanation was that those civilizations had fallen to other threats or simply declined naturally. The Council wants to keep that region for itself. You see the strategic value and wish to prevent the Empire from claiming it. Another Council member spoke up, a reptilian being from the Edge territories. "Commander, please listen. The warnings are real. My own ancestors attempted to survey that system 3,000 years ago. An entire exploration fleet vanished. Only one emergency pod escaped, and the pilot inside had gone insane. He spoke of things that made no sense before he died." Vexthor turned his cold gaze on the reptilian. "Your species has always been prone to superstition. The Zalthari do not fear ghost stories." The council leader stood, his aged body trembling slightly. "Commander Vexthor, I am begging you, do not take your fleet into Earth's space. The humans are not what they appear to be. Something about them, about their world, is fundamentally different from other species. They are dangerous in ways we do not fully understand. The only danger," Vexthor said coldly, "is to those who stand in the Empire's way. The humans will surrender or be destroyed. It is that simple." He turned to leave, but the council leader called out one more time, "Vexthor, if you proceed with this plan, you will doom your entire fleet. The council cannot protect you from what waits in that region. We can only warn you. Please, I beg you to reconsider." Vexthor paused at the doorway. For a brief moment, something in the old being's voice made him hesitate. There was genuine fear there, not political maneuvering. But then his pride reasserted itself. The Zalthari had never fled from any enemy. They would not start now because of ancient rumors. "The 5th Fleet leaves in 3 days, Vexthor announced. "We will establish Empire control over the Sol system and its surrounding regions. In 1 month I will return here with proof that your warnings were baseless paranoia." He left the chamber to the sound of worried whispers. Behind him, the council leader sank back into his seat, his face heavy with sorrow. He had tried. They had all tried. But pride and arrogance were universal constants. Another fleet would venture into Earth's territory. Another fleet would learn the truth too late. Back on his flagship, Vexthor called his senior officers to the war room. General Krath entered first, a scarred veteran who had fought beside Vexthor for 20 years. Behind him came Admiral Zexra, who commanded the fleet's carrier groups, and Colonel Thren, leader of the ground forces. "The Council wasted our time with superstitious nonsense," Vexthor began. He activated the holographic display, showing the route to Earth's system. "They claim this region is dangerous. They want us to believe that humans are somehow a threat to the Empire." General Krath studied the display with a thoughtful expression. "Commander, I have also read the old records. The pattern is consistent across multiple sources. Every civilization that entered this region disappeared completely. No distress signals, no survivors, nothing." "You sound like the Council," Vexthor said sharply. "I sound like a soldier who has survived this long by not ignoring warning signs," Krath replied. He was one of the few who could speak plainly to Vexthor without punishment. "I am not saying we should fear the humans, but perhaps we should approach with caution. Send scouts first, gather intelligence, understand what we are facing before committing the entire Fifth Fleet." Vexthor waved the suggestion away. "Caution is for the weak. The humans have no fleet capable of resisting us. Our intelligence is clear on this point. They have a few orbital stations, some primitive defense satellites, nothing more. We will sweep aside their defenses in hours, not days." Admiral Zexra spoke up. "What if the intelligence is wrong? What if the humans have hidden their true strength?" "Then, we crush whatever they reveal," Vexthor said. "The Fifth Fleet has 20,000 warships. We have planet-killer weapons. We have soldiers trained in 100 different combat techniques. What could these humans possibly have that would threaten us?" The room fell silent. No one had an answer to that question. And yet General Krath felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. Something about this mission felt wrong. The warnings were too consistent. The fear in the Council leader's voice had been too real. "We proceed as planned," Vexthor announced. "The fleet departs in 3 days. We will jump to the edge of their system, make our demands, and when they refuse, we will demonstrate the cost of defying the Empire. This will be a quick campaign. The humans will become another subject species, and the galaxy will see once again why the Zalthari rule." The officers saluted and left to prepare their forces. Only General Krath remained behind for a moment, staring at the holographic display of Earth's solar system. Something in the back of his mind screamed that they were making a terrible mistake. But orders were orders, and he was a loyal soldier of the Empire. 3 days later, the Fifth Fleet assembled in formation. 20,000 warships filled the space around the Empire's border station. It was a sight that had brought countless civilizations to their knees. Soldiers prepared their weapons. Pilots checked their fighters. Engineers ensured every system was operating at peak efficiency. On the bridge of the flagship, Vexthor gave the order. The fleet's navigation computers calculated the jump coordinates. Space folded around the massive armada, and in an instant, 20,000 warships vanished from Empire space. They were heading toward Earth, toward the restricted zone, toward the warnings that had been ignored. Behind them, in the council chamber, the old leader closed his eyes and whispered a prayer for the doomed fleet. He had seen this pattern before. He would see it again. Some lessons, it seemed, could only be learned through blood and death. The Fifth Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system, confident and ready for war. They had no idea that they had just entered their grave. The Fifth Fleet materialized at the outer edge of the solar system, near the orbit of the 9th planet. Sensors immediately began scanning the area, searching for threats. Vexthor stood at his command station, watching the data stream across multiple screens. "Report," he ordered. The sensor officer, a young Zalthari named Kexlar, worked quickly at his console. "Commander, I am detecting primitive satellites around the inner planets, several orbital stations near the 3rd planet, which our records identify as Earth. No significant military vessels detected." Vexthor smiled. It was exactly as the intelligence reports had predicted. The humans had nothing that could threaten the fleet. This would be over quickly. "Begin standard conquest protocols," he commanded. Broadcast the surrender demands in all major galactic languages. Give them 1 standard hour to respond. The communications officer activated the broadcast. The message was simple and had been used hundreds of times before. The Zalthari Empire now claimed this system. All inhabitants must surrender immediately. Resistance would result in complete destruction. Cooperation would result in incorporation into the Empire as a subject species. The message repeated across all frequencies, powerful enough to reach every corner of the solar system. Vexthor expected panic, desperate pleas for mercy, perhaps some brave but foolish defiance. What he got instead made his blood run cold. A response came within seconds. Not hours. Seconds. The voice was female, speaking in perfect Zalthari with no accent or translation delay. This is Commander Lisa Grant of the Earth Defense Initiative. You have entered restricted space without authorization. This is your only warning. Turn your fleet around and leave immediately. You will not receive another chance. The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at their stations in shock. The human spoke their language perfectly. More than that, she had responded faster than should have been possible. That meant she had been waiting, watching, ready. Vexthor's face darkened with rage. How dare this primitive species give orders to the Empire? Identify the source of that transmission. Kexler worked frantically at his console. Commander, I cannot pinpoint the exact location. The signal appears to be coming from near the 4th planet, but our sensors show nothing there. Empty space. Impossible, Vexthor growled. Scan again. While the sensors swept the area, General Krath stepped closer to the command station. His voice was low, meant only for Vexthor. Commander, they knew we were coming. They were ready. This does not match our intelligence reports. The intelligence was clearly flawed, Vexthor snapped. But it changes nothing. One human commander with a hidden communication device poses no threat to this fleet. He turned to his weapons officer. Target the Earth's moon, the larger one. Charge the planet killer weapon. We will demonstrate what happens to those who refuse to surrender. The weapons officer hesitated. Commander, the moon is not the planet itself. Destroying it would be seen as an act of aggression before they have had time to fully consider surrender. That is exactly the point, Vexthor said coldly. They will watch their moon die and understand that resistance is useless. Then they will beg to surrender. This is standard doctrine. The planet killer weapon began to charge, drawing power from the flagship's main reactor. It would take several minutes to reach full power, but once released, the beam could shatter a moon or crack a planet's surface. The weapon had ended resistance on dozens of worlds. Another transmission came through, this time a male voice. This is Admiral Jake Morrison, commanding officer of the First Fleet. I repeat Commander Grant's warning. Leave now or face the consequences. Vexthor laughed. First Fleet? They claim to have a fleet? Show me this fleet sensors. Kexelar's hands moved rapidly across his console. His face went pale. Commander, I still detect nothing. Either their fleet does not exist, or they are using stealth technology far beyond our ability to detect. Bluffs and tricks, Vexthor declared. They have nothing. They are trying to frighten us with empty threats. Continue charging the weapon. The minutes ticked by. The weapon reached full charge. Vexthor gave the order to fire. A massive beam of concentrated energy lanced out from the flagship, crossing millions of kilometers in seconds. It struck toward the moon with enough power to tear it apart. The beam vanished. One moment it was there, a brilliant line of destructive force. The next moment it simply disappeared as if it had never existed. The sensors showed readings that made no sense. Localized gravitational anomalies, space-time distortions, energy absorption at impossible levels. What happened? Vexthor roared. Where did my weapon go? Kexlar's voice shook. Commander, something intercepted the beam. Something absorbed the entire energy discharge. Our sensors cannot explain how. Then space began to shimmer. All around the Fifth Fleet, reality seemed to fold and twist. The darkness of space rippled like water, and ships appeared. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. They materialized from nothing, dropping stealth fields that had made them completely invisible. These were not the primitive vessels Vexthor had expected. They were sleek and dangerous, covered in weapon systems that the Zalthari database could not fully identify. They moved with precision, forming attack patterns that spoke of serious military training. General Krath grabbed the sensor data, his experienced eyes reading the formations. Commander, I count over 3,000 vessels. They are moving into attack positions around our fleet. These are military ships, not exploration or defense satellites. The male voice came through again, Admiral Jake Morrison. His tone was calm but held an edge of warning. Last chance. Leave now. We do not want to destroy you, but we will if you force our hand. Vex Thor felt his rage reach a boiling point. This was impossible. The intelligence had been completely wrong. But it did not matter. The Fifth Fleet still had 20,000 ships. The humans had 3,000. Numbers would decide this battle. All ships battle formation Delta, Vex Thor commanded. Prepare to engage. Show these humans what real military power looks like. The Fifth Fleet began to move, warships spreading out into their practiced attack formation. Weapon systems powered up across thousands of ships. Fighter craft launched from carriers, filling space with smaller attack vessels. The human fleet held position, waiting. They did not break formation or show any sign of panic. Vex Thor opened a channel to all his ship commanders. We are the Fifth Fleet of the Zelthari Empire. We have conquered 40 star systems. We have destroyed civilizations that dared to resist us. These humans think they can frighten us with tricks and hidden ships. They are wrong. Today we will teach them the price of defiance. His officers cheered. The soldiers prepared for battle. The entire fleet surged forward, weapons hot and ready. Commander Lisa Grant sat in the command center deep beneath Earth's surface. Screens showed the Zelthari fleet advancing. She looked at the officer beside her, Lieutenant Ben Carter, who commanded the fighter squadrons. They are really going to attack, Ben said quietly. After all the warnings, Lisa nodded. Pride is a powerful thing. It makes intelligent beings do stupid things. The Council tried to warn them. We tried to warn them. But they would not listen. Should we have shown them more? Ben asked. Demonstrated our full capabilities? It would not have mattered, Lisa replied. They came here convinced of their superiority. Nothing short of defeat will change their minds. She activated her communication channel to Admiral Morrison. Jake, they are committed. Take them down. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the EDS Vengeance, one of humanity's newest battleships. He had fought in 3 wars before Earth achieved faster-than-light travel. He understood combat in ways that species who bought peace through superior technology never could. All ships, he transmitted. Weapons free. Show them why the Council marked this region as forbidden. The human fleet moved. They did not charge forward in a simple mass like the Zelthari. Instead, they separated into smaller groups, each unit moving with perfect coordination. They slipped between the Zelthari formations, exploiting gaps that the aliens did not even realize existed. The first human weapons fired. Railguns launched solid projectiles at a fraction of light speed. The Zelthari shields, designed to stop energy weapons and missiles, might as well have been paper. The railgun rounds punched through shields and hulls, leaving massive holes in their wake. Vex Thor watched in growing horror as his ships began to die. The humans were not fighting like any species he had encountered. They moved too fast. Their weapons were too effective. His crews were trained, but they had never faced an enemy like this. Return fire, he screamed. All weapons maximum power. The Fifth Fleet opened up with everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, kinetic weapons, all firing at the human ships. Some shots connected, and several human vessels took damage. But for every human ship hit, 5 Zelthari warships died. General Krath grabbed Vex Thor's arm. Commander, we need to retreat. We are losing ships too quickly. This is not a battle we can win. We have 20,000 ships, Vex Thor shouted. We cannot lose to 3,000. They are not fighting like 3,000 separate ships, Krath replied. They are fighting like one unified force. They anticipated every move we make. It is as if they have studied our tactics for years. A massive explosion rocked the flagship as a human missile got through the defenses. Damage reports flooded in from all over the ship. The bridge lights flickered. Vex Thor stared at the tactical display. In just 30 minutes of combat, his fleet had lost over 4,000 ships. The humans had lost less than 200. The battle was not just going badly. It was a disaster. Pull back to the outer system, he ordered. We regroup and assess the situation. But as the Fifth Fleet tried to retreat, they discovered another problem. The humans were not letting them go easily. Fighter craft pursued the fleeing warships, picking off stragglers with precise attacks. The Fifth Fleet limped away from Earth, bloodied and shocked. They had come expecting an easy conquest. Instead, They had found an enemy that fought with a skill and ferocity they could not match. And this, the surviving crews would soon learn, was only the beginning. The Fifth Fleet regrouped near the orbit of the sixth planet, a gas giant with massive rings. Vexthor stood among the wreckage of his command center, watching repair crews work to fix the damaged systems. Around his flagship, the remains of his once mighty armada tried to restore some sense of order. General Krath approached with a datapad. His face was grim. "Final count, Commander. We lost 4,200 ships in the first engagement. Another 800 are too damaged to fight. We have less than 15,000 combat-ready vessels remaining." Vexthor's hands clenched into fists. One battle. Just one battle, and he had lost a quarter of his fleet. The shame of it burned in his chest. "What about the humans?" he asked. "They lost 197 ships," Krath replied. "And from what our sensors detected, most of those were actually decoys. Drones designed to draw fire. Their actual casualties may be less than 50 vessels." The words hit Vexthor like physical blows. 50 ships. They had destroyed 50 human ships while losing thousands of their own. This was not just a defeat. It was humiliation. "How is this possible?" Vexthor demanded. "Our weapons are the most advanced in the galaxy. Our tactics have conquered 40 star systems. How are these humans defeating us so easily?" Krath pulled up a tactical analysis on the datapad. "I have been reviewing the battle recordings. Commander, the humans are not just more advanced than we thought. They fight differently than any species we have encountered. Watch this." He showed footage of the battle, a group of human fighter craft attacking a Zalthari carrier. The fighters moved in ways that should have been impossible. They pulled turns that would have crushed normal pilots with the force of acceleration. They worked together with perfect coordination, each pilot knowing exactly what the others would do. "They are enhanced," Krath explained. "Their bodies have been modified to survive forces that would kill us. And they are not individuals fighting together. They are a unit, a single organism with many parts. This is not technology alone. This is a completely different way of thinking about warfare." Vexthor watched as one fighter pilot, identified in the recording as Captain Ben Carter, destroyed 3 Zalthari destroyers in less than 2 minutes. The human flew his small craft with impossible skill, threading between weapons fire, exploiting every weakness in the Zalthari defenses. "They have been preparing for this," Krath continued, "not for months or years, for generations. Everything about their military, from their ship designs to their training to their tactics, is designed for one purpose: to kill anyone who threatens their world." Another officer approached, the intelligence analyst Vexna. She carried her own datapad. "Commander, I have been reviewing all available information about Earth. The picture that emerges is disturbing." "Tell me," Vexthor ordered. Vexna activated a holographic display showing Earth. "The humans call their planet a death world. It is more hostile to life than 90% of inhabited planets in the galaxy. Extreme weather, dangerous predators, diseases, natural disasters. The humans evolved in an environment that killed most species that developed there." She zoomed in on the planet's surface. "They are persistence hunters, Commander. On Earth, humans could not run as fast as their prey or fight as well with natural weapons. So they learned to chase prey for days, tracking it until it collapsed from exhaustion. They learned patience and strategy because raw strength was not enough." "What does this have to do with their military?" Vexthor asked. "Everything," Vexna replied. "Humans have been at war with each other for their entire history. 10,000 years of constant conflict. They developed weapons and tactics not to conquer other species but to fight themselves. Every war taught them new lessons. Every defeat made them adapt and improve." She showed images of human history. Ancient battles with primitive weapons, wars fought with chemical explosives, nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities. They nearly wiped themselves out multiple times. But they survived. And every time they recovered, they came back stronger. General Krath added his own analysis. "Commander, we need to face the truth. The Council was right to warn us. The humans are not a primitive species ready for conquest. They are the galaxy's apex predators. We walked into the territory of something far more dangerous than we understood." Vexthor slammed his fist on the console. "I refuse to accept this. We still have 15,000 ships. We will attack again, this time with different tactics. We will adapt as they have adapted." "Commander," Krath said carefully, "I strongly advise against another assault. We should retreat, report what we have found, and request reinforcements. Pride is not worth the destruction of the entire fleet." "Pride?" Vexthor's voice rose. This is not about pride. This is about the Empire. If we retreat now, we admit that these humans defeated us. Every subject species will hear about it. Every conquered world will think rebellion is possible. The Empire cannot afford to show weakness. Krath's expression hardened. Then the Empire cannot afford commanders who value reputation over the lives of their soldiers. The words hung in the air. For a moment, Vexthor considered having Krath arrested for insubordination. But the general spoke truth, and everyone on the bridge knew it. Before Vexthor could respond, the sensor officer called out. Commander, I am detecting movement from the human fleet. They are advancing toward our position. Battle stations, Vexthor ordered immediately. Prepare defensive formation. The Fifth Fleet scrambled into position. But as the human ships approached, something became clear. The humans were not rushing forward for another massive engagement. They were stalking. Small groups of human vessels moved through the Zalthari formation like sharks through a school of fish. They would strike, destroy a few ships, then fade away before the Zalthari could respond effectively. It was not a battle, it was a hunt. Admiral Jake Morrison commanded the operation from his flagship. He watched the tactical display with experienced eyes. The Zalthari were trying to form a defensive perimeter, but their doctrine was not designed for this kind of warfare. They are thinking in terms of static defense, he explained to his bridge crew. They want to create a wall of ships that we have to break through, but we are not going to oblige them. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan commanded one of the strike groups. Her squadron of 20 fighters had just destroyed a Zalthari cruiser and its escort. Admiral, they are starting to adapt. They are keeping tighter formations, reducing the gaps we can exploit. Then we change the game again, Jake replied. All strike groups switch to pattern Omega. Hit their supply ships and support vessels. Make them choose between protecting their warships or their logistics. The human forces shifted their tactics instantly. They began targeting the tankers, repair ships, and supply vessels that kept the Fifth Fleet operational. Without those support ships, the warships would run out of ammunition and fuel within days. Vexthor watched in growing despair as his fleet was torn apart piece by piece. The humans never gave him the stand-up fight he wanted. They struck from unexpected angles, destroyed high-value targets, and vanished before he could retaliate effectively. They are playing with us, General Krath said quietly. They could destroy the entire fleet if they committed their full forces. But they are being careful. Methodical, they are teaching us a lesson. Another explosion rocked the flagship. More damage reports came in. They had lost another 1,000 ships in the past 6 hours. The humans had lost fewer than 20. Vexthor finally accepted the truth. He could not win this battle. The humans were superior in every way that mattered. Better ships, better weapons, better tactics, better pilots, and most importantly, they understood warfare at a level the Zalthari had never needed to develop. Signal all ships, Vexthor said, his voice hollow. We retreat to the edge of the system. Full speed. The Fifth Fleet turned and ran. The proud armada that had entered Earth's space with such confidence now fled in disorder. Ships collided with each other in their haste to escape. Some broke formation entirely, their crews panicking. The humans pursued, but they did not press their advantage. They kept their distance, herding the Zalthari fleet like wolves driving prey. They were guiding the fleet toward something. General Krath noticed it first. Commander, they are pushing us toward a specific area. Between the fourth and third planets. Why? Vexthor asked. I do not know, Krath admitted. But we should change course immediately. Vexthor gave the order, but the human ships moved to block every alternate route. Any ship that tried to break away from the main group was immediately targeted and destroyed. The humans were not just pursuing. They were directing the fleet exactly where they wanted it to go. Commander Lisa Grant watched from Earth's command center. Everything was going according to plan. The Zalthari had ignored the warnings. They had attacked Earth's forces. They had given humanity every justification needed for what came next. The fleet is in position, her tactical officer reported. All ships have moved to safe distance. Lisa opened a channel to Admiral Morrison. Jake, fall back to the outer perimeter. Let the automated systems handle this. Confirmed, Jake replied. All human vessels withdrawing now. The Zalthari crews noticed the sudden retreat. For a moment they thought they had been granted mercy. They thought the humans were letting them escape. Then something else appeared in the space around them. Objects rising from Earth's atmosphere. Massive cylindrical devices, each one the size of a battleship. The humans called them gravemakers. Vexthor stared at the approaching objects. What are those? Weapons, missiles? Kexlar worked frantically at his sensors. Commander, I'm reading massive energy signatures. Something is activating. I cannot identify the technology. Evasive maneuvers, Vexthor ordered. All ships scatter. But it was too late. The trap had closed, and the Fifth Fleet was about to learn why previous civilizations had vanished without a trace in Earth's space. The Gravemakers activated. Space itself began to scream. The Gravemakers surrounded the Fifth Fleet in a perfect sphere. 12 massive devices, each one humming with power that made the Zalthari sensors scream warnings. Vexthor watched them with growing dread, knowing that something terrible was about to happen but unable to understand what. All weapons, target those objects, he commanded. Destroy them before they activate fully. The fleet's weapons opened fire. Energy beams, missiles, and kinetic rounds struck the Gravemakers from every direction. The weapons hit their targets but seemed to have no effect. The devices absorbed every attack, their surfaces glowing brighter with each impact. General Krath grabbed the sensor data, his eyes widening. Commander, they are using our own weapons as fuel. Every shot we fire makes them stronger. Cease fire, Vexthor ordered immediately. All ships cease fire, but the damage was done. The Gravemakers had absorbed enough energy. They reached critical activation threshold. Space began to change. At first it was subtle, a slight distortion in the way light moved, a shimmer at the edges of vision. Then reality itself seemed to fold inward. The Zalthari crews watched in horror as the laws of physics stopped making sense. On the Zalthari cruiser Dawn's Edge, Captain Thexra felt his ship shudder. The hull groaned, metal twisting in ways metal should not twist. He looked at his engineering display and saw readings that were impossible. The ship was being compressed not by external force but by space itself collapsing inward. Hull breach on all decks, his engineer screamed. But there is no breach. The hull is intact, yet we are losing atmosphere. Thexra did not understand. How could a ship lose air without holes in the hull? Then he saw it, small gaps appearing in reality itself, tiny tears in space through which atmosphere was being pulled into somewhere else, somewhere dark and empty and wrong. His crew began to vanish, not die. Vanish. One moment a soldier stood at her post. The next moment she was gone, simply erased from existence as if she had never been there. Others followed, disappearing one by one, their screams cut off mid-breath. Thexra grabbed the communication console. Flagship, this is Dawn's Edge. We need immediate evacuation. The ship is breaking apart. My crew is disappearing. The response came through broken with static. All ships reporting same situation. Maintain position. We are attempting to find a way out. But there was no way out. The Gravemakers had created a zone from which nothing could escape. A bubble in space where the normal rules no longer applied. On the flagship, Vexthor watched his fleet die. Ships simply stopped functioning. Their power cores failed. Their life support shut down. Crews suffocated or froze as their vessels became tombs. Other ships imploded, crushed by invisible forces. Some vanished entirely, blinking out of existence in an instant. What is happening? Vexthor demanded. What are these weapons doing? Vexina, the intelligence analyst, had been studying the sensor data. Her voice shook as she explained. Commander, these devices are not weapons in the traditional sense. They are manipulating space-time itself. They are creating localized areas where physical laws break down. Ships are not being destroyed. They are being erased. That is impossible, Vexthor said. No technology can do that. Human technology can, Vexna replied. We underestimated them in every way possible. They are not just advanced. They have progressed beyond what we thought was possible. A transmission came through from Earth. Commander Lisa Grant's voice, calm and clear despite the destruction happening in space. Commander Vexthor, this is your last opportunity. We are willing to deactivate the Gravemakers if you order an immediate and complete surrender. Your crews will be imprisoned but kept alive. You have 60 seconds to decide. Vexthor looked around his bridge. His officers stared at him with desperate eyes. Outside, his fleet was dying. Thousands of ships, hundreds of thousands of soldiers, all because of his pride and arrogance. General Krath stepped forward. Commander, order the surrender. Save who we can. There is no shame in admitting defeat when the enemy is this far beyond us. For a moment, Vexthor considered it. He could save lives. He could preserve what remained of the fleet. But then he thought about returning to the Empire in chains. He thought about the humiliation of surrender. He thought about his reputation and his pride. "No," he said quietly. "We are Zeltari. We do not surrender." Krath's face went pale. "You are condemning us all to death." "We were already condemned," Vexthor replied. "The moment we ignored the warnings and came to this cursed system. At least this way we die as warriors, not as prisoners begging for mercy." The 60 seconds passed. No surrender came. Commander Lisa Grant closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of what came next. She had hoped they would choose survival. But pride was indeed a universal constant. "Activate full protocol," she ordered. No survivors. The Gravemakers increased their power. The sphere around the Fifth Fleet became a zone of pure destruction. Ships did not just malfunction now. They ceased to exist. Matter broke down at the atomic level. Energy dissipated into nothing. Space itself consumed the fleet. On the flagship, systems failed one by one. The lights went out. Gravity failed. The air grew cold. Vexthor floated in the darkness, watching through the viewport as his empire's greatest fleet disappeared into the void. General Krath drifted next to him. In the dim emergency lighting, his expression was sad rather than afraid. "We should have listened to the council," he said softly. "They tried to warn us." "I know," Vexthor admitted. "It was too late for pride now. I led them all to their deaths because I could not accept that we might not be the strongest species in the galaxy." "The humans tried to warn us too," Krath continued. "Multiple warnings. Multiple chances to leave peacefully. We ignored everyone. Around them, the crew was dying. Some suffocated as the air leaked away. Others froze. A few simply vanished, taken by whatever force the Gravemakers controlled. The ship itself was coming apart, pieces of hull disappearing into the darkness. Vexthor felt his consciousness fading. The cold was overwhelming now. "Krath," he whispered. "If any survived, tell them. Tell the Empire what happened here. Make sure they know the truth about Earth." "I will try," Krath promised. But he knew his chances of survival were nearly zero. The flagship broke apart. The command section separated from the rest of the ship, tumbling through space. Inside, Vexthor took his last breath, his final thoughts filled with regret and shame. But General Krath was lucky, if such a word could be used. His section of the ship was on the outer edge of the Gravemaker field. As the flagship died, a piece of debris struck his location, pushing it outside the sphere of destruction. He found himself in an escape pod, one that had automatically deployed when the ship broke apart. The pod's emergency systems activated, providing air and warmth. Through the small viewport, he watched the end of the Fifth Fleet. 20,000 ships had entered Earth's space. Now less than 10 remained, scattered survivors on the edges of the destruction. The rest were gone, not destroyed in the traditional sense, simply erased from existence as if they had never been. The Gravemakers completed their work. The space where the fleet had been was now empty. No debris, no wreckage, no bodies floating in the void. Nothing but darkness and silence. Commander Lisa Grant reviewed the final reports. The Gravemakers had performed exactly as designed. The threat to Earth was eliminated. But she felt no joy in the victory. 20,000 ships meant hundreds of thousands of crew members. Hundreds of thousands of lives ended because their leader would not listen to reason. "Should we recover the survivors?" her tactical officer asked. "Sensors show a few escape pods and damaged ships on the outer edge." Lisa considered. These survivors could carry the warning back to the galaxy. They could tell their empire what happened when someone ignored the restrictions around Earth. But they could also return with reinforcements, bringing an even larger fleet. Admiral Jake Morrison appeared on her communication screen. "Lisa, the decision is yours. But I recommend we let them go. They need to carry the message back. Otherwise, the galaxy will never truly understand why this region is forbidden." Lisa nodded slowly. "You are right. Let them go. Monitor them until they leave the system, but do not engage unless they show hostile intent." In his escape pod, General Krath received a transmission. A human voice, male, probably Admiral Morrison. "General Krath, we are allowing you and the other survivors to depart. Collect whoever you can and leave this system. Tell your empire what happened here. Tell them why the warnings exist. Tell them that humanity wants peace but will not hesitate to defend itself." Krath activated his communication system. "This is General Krath, I understand. We will leave immediately, and we will deliver your message. He used the pod's limited propulsion to reach the nearest damaged ship that still had functioning engines. 4 other survivors joined him there. Together, 5 ships out of 20,000 prepared to leave Earth's space. As they moved toward the edge of the system, Krath looked back one final time. The planet Earth hung in space, blue and white and beautiful. It looked peaceful, harmless. But he now knew the truth. That world and its inhabitants were the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The 5 ships jumped to hyperspace, leaving behind the graveyard that had consumed the 5th Fleet. Behind them, the Gravemakers slowly descended back to Earth's surface, their purpose fulfilled once more. Humanity returned to its vigil, watching the stars and hoping that this demonstration would buy them more time before the next arrogant empire came calling. The journey back to Zalthari space took 3 weeks. General Krath spent that time documenting everything that had happened. He recorded the warnings they had ignored. He detailed the battle. He described the Gravemakers and how the fleet had simply ceased to exist. Every detail needed to be preserved. The other survivors dealt with their trauma in different ways. Some could not sleep, haunted by memories of their crewmates vanishing into darkness. Others sat in silence, staring at nothing. All of them understood they had witnessed something that would change the galaxy forever. When they finally emerged from hyperspace near the Empire's home world, Krath immediately sent a priority message to High Command. The response came quickly. He was ordered to report directly to the Imperial Council, the ruling body of the Zalthari Empire. The council chamber was a vast room lined with statues of past emperors. 50 council members sat in raised seats looking down on the floor where Krath stood. The emperor himself, ancient and powerful, occupied the highest throne. General Krath. The emperor's voice echoed through the chamber. You return alone from a fleet of 20,000 ships. Explain this disaster. Krath straightened despite his exhaustion. Your Majesty, members of the council, the 5th Fleet encountered an enemy far beyond our capabilities. Commander Vexthor ignored warnings from the Galactic Council about entering Earth's restricted zone. The humans defended their territory with technology and tactics we cannot match. The fleet was destroyed. I witnessed ships simply erased from existence by weapons we have no defense against. Murmurs ran through the council. One member, a military strategist named Voxel, spoke up. Impossible. No single species could destroy 20,000 ships. You must be exaggerating due to trauma. I wish I was, Krath replied, but I have complete sensor recordings from multiple ships. I have testimony from the other survivors. Everything is documented. He activated a holographic display, showing footage of the battle and the Gravemakers at work. The council watched in silence. They saw the human fleet moving with impossible coordination. They saw Zalthari ships dying by the dozens. They saw the Gravemakers activate and the fleet simply vanishing from reality. The Emperor leaned forward, his expression troubled. How is this possible? Our intelligence indicated that humans were primitive, recently spacefaring, no significant military force. Our intelligence was designed to deceive us, Krath explained. The humans have been spacefaring for generations, possibly centuries, but they chose to hide their true capabilities. They allowed the galaxy to think they were weak while they observed and learned. When we entered their space, they already knew everything about our tactics, our weapons, our strategies. We knew nothing about them. Another council member spoke. But why? Why would they hide? If they are so powerful, why not expand into the galaxy as we have? Because they do not want to, Krath said simply. They want isolation. They want peace. They marked their territory with warnings and asked to be left alone. We ignored those warnings and paid the price. The Emperor sat back on his throne, thinking. After a long silence, he spoke. What do you recommend, General? We must respect Earth's boundaries, Krath said firmly. We must inform all of our subject species about what happened, and we must send a formal communication to the Galactic Council, acknowledging that their warnings were justified. The region around Earth should be considered absolute forbidden territory for all Zalthari vessels. You ask us to admit defeat, Voxel said angrily. You ask us to show weakness. I ask us to show wisdom, Krath countered. Pride destroyed the 5th Fleet. Pride killed hundreds of thousands of our people. We cannot afford more pride. The humans gave us multiple chances to leave peacefully. Commander Vexthor chose to ignore those chances. That choice cost him everything. The Emperor nodded slowly. General Krath speaks truth. Send word throughout the Empire. No Zalthari vessel will enter Earth's space. Add it to our forbidden zones with the highest warning level. On the neutral station where the Galactic Council met, the emergency session drew representatives from across known space. The news of the Fifth Fleet's destruction had spread quickly. Every species wanted to know what had happened. The council leader, the elderly Mothra, called the session to order. General Krath of the Zalthari Empire has requested permission to address the council. Given the circumstances, I believe we should hear what he has to say. Krath entered the chamber. He looked different from when Vexthor had stood in the same place. Less arrogant, more humble. The weight of what he had seen showed in his eyes. Honored council members, Krath began, I come before you to confirm what you already suspected. The Fifth Fleet ignored your warnings about Earth. We entered their space. We threatened their world. And we were destroyed. Of 20,000 ships, only 5 escaped. I stand here not as a representative of Zalthari strength, but as a messenger warning others not to repeat our mistake. He activated a holographic recording. The council watched as the battle unfolded. They saw the human fleet appear from nowhere. They saw the coordinated attacks. They saw the Gravemakers erase thousands of ships from existence. When the recording ended, the chamber was silent. Finally, the reptilian representative who had tried to warn Vexthor spoke. My people tried to survey Earth's system 3,000 years ago. One survivor returned, driven insane by what he witnessed. For 3,000 years, we wondered what happened to that fleet. Now we know. Other representatives added their own stories. The pattern became clear. Over the past 5,000 years, at least 7 different civilizations had tested Earth's defenses. None had succeeded. The humans had been defending their territory for millennia, growing stronger and more prepared with each attempt. The council leader addressed the gathering. The evidence is overwhelming. Humanity is not a primitive species ready to join galactic civilization. They are something else entirely. Something dangerous, something that has chosen isolation over expansion. We must respect that choice, a voice called out from the assembly. But what if they decide to expand? What if they turn their weapons outward instead of inward? They could conquer the entire galaxy with that technology. Krath shook his head. I do not believe they will. In our final communication, the humans made their position clear. They want peace. They want isolation. As long as we respect their boundaries, they have no reason to leave their territory. But if we continue to threaten them, if we continue to test their defenses, eventually they may decide that offense is better than defense. The council leader stood. Then we must ensure that no species makes that mistake. Effective immediately, Earth's region is upgraded to Class 1 Forbidden Territory. Any vessel entering that space will be considered to have violated galactic law. This council will not protect any species that chooses to ignore these restrictions. The assembly voted. The measure passed with only 3 dissenting votes, all from species that still believed military might was the ultimate power. Across the galaxy, the news spread. The story of the Fifth Fleet became a warning tale told to young warriors. Earth became known as the Grave World, the place where arrogance went to die. On Earth, Commander Lisa Grant stood on a balcony overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Jake Morrison joined her, carrying 2 cups of coffee. The Council has officially upgraded our restriction level, Jake said. We are now the highest level of forbidden territory in their database. Good, Lisa replied. Maybe that will buy us some peace for a while. Do you think they will stay away? Jake asked. Or will someone else eventually decide to test us? Lisa sighed. Someone always tests. Pride is universal. Fear fades. Memory grows short. In 50 years, maybe 100, some new empire will arise that thinks it is strong enough. They will ignore the warnings just like the Zalthari did. And we will destroy them too, Jake said quietly. Yes, Lisa agreed. Because we have no choice. We cannot allow any hostile force to establish a foothold in our system. The moment we show weakness, the moment we let even one invasion succeed, every empire in the galaxy will think they can conquer us. They stood in silence, watching the waves. Behind them, Earth continued its daily life. Billions of people going about their business, unaware of how close they had come to war. The planetary defense forces were already standing down, returning to their watching positions. Do you ever wonder if we are doing the right thing? Jake asked. Hiding our strength? Letting the galaxy think we are dangerous monsters? Every day, Lisa admitted. But the alternative is worse. If we revealed everything, if we showed them that humans are not monsters but people who just want to be left alone, some species would see it as weakness. They would test us, probe our defenses, look for vulnerabilities. This way, with fear and mystery, they stay away. The price is high, Jake said. We have to destroy any fleet that comes here. Kill thousands, maybe millions, just to maintain our reputation. The price of peace always is, Lisa replied. We give them every chance. Multiple warnings, every opportunity to leave. If they still choose to attack, they make the choice for us. Far above them, the Gravemakers rested in their orbital stations, silent and waiting, ready to defend Earth against the next threat. And there would be a next threat. The galaxy was vast and memory was short. In the Zalthari Empire, General Krath was promoted to the position of High Commander of Strategic Defense. His first act was to establish a new military academy, where officers studied the Battle of Earth. Not to learn how to defeat the humans, but to learn the cost of ignoring warnings and letting pride guide strategy. The recordings of the battle became required viewing for all military personnel. Future generations of Zalthari warriors watched their empire's greatest fleet die and learned humility. On the neutral station, the Council maintained their records. They added detailed documentation of the Fifth Fleet's destruction to the already substantial file on Earth. Future civilizations would have access to thousands of years of warnings and evidence. But the Council leader knew that documentation would not be enough. Some species would still think they were different, smarter, stronger, better prepared than those who came before, and so the cycle would continue. Warnings issued, warnings ignored, fleets destroyed, lessons learned too late. Earth remained isolated in its corner of the galaxy. Humanity watched the stars and prepared. They improved their defenses. They refined their weapons. They trained new generations of warriors who understood that protecting home was not about conquest or glory. It was about survival. The region around Earth became known by many names across the galaxy. The Forbidden Zone, the Grave World, the Dead Space, the Human Territory. But the meaning was always the same. A warning carved in the void. A monument built from the remains of those who thought strength and arrogance were enough. A reminder that some species chose isolation not because they were weak, but because they were strong enough to know the true cost of war. The galaxy learned to respect that choice. Most civilizations at least learned that lesson. Those who did not became examples for future generations. Their fate was always the same. They were warned to stay away from Earth's region. Arrogance made it their grave. And humanity, the patient hunters, the persistent predators, the species born from a death world, continued their vigil. Watching, waiting, ready. The warning remained clear. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. But threaten our home, and you will discover why the wisest civilizations in the galaxy mark our space as forbidden. Some lessons can only be learned through tragedy. Some warnings are written in blood and darkness, and some species, like humanity, are best left undisturbed in their corner of the stars.